Welcome to Teaching Success with Inside Fundamentals 1 and 2. My name is Jennifer Elligood, Professional Development Manager for National Geographic Learning, and I will be your presenter for this session. Today we'll be taking a thorough look at the instruction in Inside Fundamentals Volumes 1 and 2. We'll begin with the unit launch, which sets the stage for learning. Next, we'll take a detailed look at the instruction in each unit, including language development, language and literacy, language and content, and writing. And finally, we'll take an in-depth look at the assessment tools Insight offers for progress monitoring, reteaching, and even formative assessment. Before we look at the unit instruction in Fundamentals Volumes 1 and 2, I want to share some information about the Foundations of Reading section that's found at the beginning of Volume 1. The Foundations of Reading addresses the needs of students who require instruction in foundational elements of reading, such as consonant sound spellings, short vowel sound spellings, and the most common high-frequency words. To help inform instruction and to determine if students require instruction in foundational elements of reading, use these assessment tools that are found in the Inside Level Fundamentals Assessment Handbook: the Phonemic Awareness Assessment, the Letter Sound Name Assessment, and the High Frequency Word Assessment. All of the instruction for the Foundations of Reading is found in the Fundamentals Volume 1 Teacher's Edition. The Foundations of Reading section includes an instructional routine for teaching high-frequency words, which includes a model lesson, word lists, and practice sentences, and phonics and decoding lessons that cover all consonant and short vowel sound spellings, as well as instruction and practice in blending words with short vowels. These lessons are organized into the 5 groups that you see here. You will use the sound spelling cards, phonics and decoding transparencies, student practice books, and letter and word tiles to teach the concepts covered in the Foundations of Reading. Except for the practice book pages, all of these materials will be found in your Inside Phonics kit. The Foundations of Reading section organizes 91 of the most basic high-frequency words into 15 sets for instruction. The practice book pages listed for each group of sound spellings rely on students being able to recognize the 3 sets of high-frequency words above. Be sure to tab page F4 in your Fundamentals Volume 1 Teacher's Edition for a detailed description of the high-frequency word instructional routine. The instructional routines for teaching high-frequency words and sounds and spellings in the Foundations of Reading are the same routines that you'll use throughout the unit instruction in Fundamentals Volumes 1 and 2. We will take a detailed look at these routines as we work our way throughout the unit. As I mentioned before, your Fundamentals Volume 1 Assessment Handbook provides a variety of assessment tools to help determine whether or not students need instruction in the Foundations of Reading. The Fundamentals Volume 1 Assessment Handbook also provides a Foundations of Reading test to be administered once you have completed the instruction to help monitor progress. Now let's begin by reviewing the instructional path for each unit in Fundamentals Volume 1 and 2. Each unit begins with a unit launch, where students make connections and preview the unit. In the language development section, students will learn key vocabulary, language functions, and grammar. They'll also use the theme book to listen and read along while focusing on comprehension. The language and literacy section teaches high-frequency words, phonics, and decoding in an age-appropriate and respectful way for adolescent readers. Also, the same comprehension skill that was introduced in the language development lessons continues as students read a selection on their own. The language and content section explores text features and nonfiction genres and focuses on comprehension with an opportunity to read expository text. The comprehension focus will be the same as it is in the language development and language and literacy strands. Finally, the writing project connects key skills from every section: language, literacy, and content. This project will always be tightly connected to what students have been reading. And here you can see the progression from language development to language and literacy to language and content to the close reading and finally the writing project. Please turn to a unit launch in your Teacher's Edition. For this session, I'll be using Fundamentals Volume 2, Unit 1 as an example, but everything that I share will be applicable to Fundamentals Volume 1 as well. If you focus on the purpose of each lesson rather than the specific content, you'll be able to easily apply what you learn to the level you are working with, because each unit follows the same pattern. The main goals of the unit launch are to engage the students and set the stage for learning by introducing the unit topic, making connections, previewing the unit, and setting goals. We begin by introducing the unit theme, in this case, Here to Help. Students are asked to use the visual as they discuss the unit theme. The student book also includes a launch activity to help engage students in the unit theme. Homeschool connections are also provided for each unit through a family letter. Sending the newsletter home before teaching the unit establishes an important homeschool connection and helps families support and extend learning. Each family letter is available in 9 languages and can be printed from the Inside Teaching website. Now it's time to preview the unit. The teacher wrap provides specific pages for previewing activities the students will do throughout the unit. Next, you will begin to develop a class mind map to help set unit goals. Prompt students for pictures or words to add and have them act out and describe other ideas for you to put into words. Students also may have access to the folktale collection for additional reading. These books relate to the language structures taught within the unit. Following the unit launch, the language development instruction begins. The language development instruction in each unit follows the same instructional pattern. The first step is to introduce a language function. Next, students build vocabulary and develop their grammar and writing skills. And the final step in the language development section is to listen and read along with the theme book. Let's take a detailed look at each of these lessons. When introducing and teaching the language function, the first step is to tap into students' prior knowledge. In this part of the lesson, you will have students imagine real-life discussions they've had with their friends where they've used the language function they are about to learn. Next, students have the opportunity to listen to a song or chant that incorporates the language function. Students hear multiple language models to help them experience the language function in action and participate in songs, chants, and other audio lessons to try out the language function in a risk-free way. Then, using the text from the song or chant, students preview the grammar using the call-out chart to talk through and identify the grammar focus within the text. Now it's time to use the top of the academic language frame to explain the how-to of the language function. These frames provide structure for using language to carry out academic tasks. And finally, students apply what they've learned in Express Yourself. Students work with a partner as they use the language function. Examples are provided in the student book, and the bottom half of the academic language frame can be used to provide additional support. Students also have the opportunity to apply what they've learned about the language function within their practice book. The next step in the language development section is to build vocabulary. In each Teach Vocabulary lesson, you will follow these 5 steps as you teach students new words. Define the category, connect words and pictures, say and use words, oral language practice, and written practice. We begin by defining the category. Some examples include time words, opposites, and career words. Then students connect the words and pictures as you read the captions aloud, and say and use the words chorally. Next, it's time for oral language practice using the language CD and the academic language frame. And finally, students practice writing the words. As you can see, multi-level strategies are provided to help students write their sentences. You may have noticed that the multi-level strategies only apply to students at the beginning and intermediate level. If students fall into the advanced category, they should be working in inside levels A, B, or C, as Fundamentals 1 and 2 are probably not at their challenge level. Students then have a variety of ways to practice this new vocabulary on a daily basis using the recommended vocabulary routines and their practice book. Specific directions for each of these routines are found behind the Teaching Routines and Strategies tab within your Teacher's Edition. Depending on the unit you are working with, there may be more than one Teach Vocabulary lesson, and in some units the grammar and writing lesson, which we will now look at, may come before the Teach Vocabulary lesson. However, whatever the order, the lessons follow the same instructional path. The grammar and writing lessons in the language development section teach students about a specific grammar skill and provide opportunities for them to apply that skill on their own. The grammar and writing lessons, as well as many other lessons throughout Insight, are designed to scaffold learners' efforts and to gradually release responsibilities to the students through the gradual release of responsibility model, in which the teacher gradually withdraws support as the student becomes more competent performing the skill. In the grammar and writing lesson, you begin by teaching students what the grammar skill is and model what it is that you want the students to learn. Then it's time for students to practice what they've learned. As you can see, there are 3 levels of practice. Structured practice occurs with you, the teacher. Guided practice gives students the opportunity to practice on their own, but with you there for support if they need it. And independent practice is when they finally take what they've learned and apply it on their own. This explicit direct instruction is an integral part of Insight. Be sure to read Dr. David Moore's author monograph, Direct Instruction, Targeted Strategies for Student Success, on page PD19 for a more detailed description of each step in the gradual release model. Let's take a more detailed look at the grammar and writing lesson. As I said before, you'll begin by teaching students about the grammar skill, in this case using phrases with have to and need to. Then, using the examples and callouts provided, you model how these phrases work. Now it's time to practice together by building sentences using the images and sentence frames provided. Once you've completed the first few together, move into guided practice by having students chorally complete the sentence. Notice the red arrows under the Try It section. This is on the spot corrective feedback. These are tips for modifying instruction when students need additional support, and they are built right into the lessons in Insight. The guided practice continues as students apply what they've learned in writing. Multi-level strategies, as you see here, are provided to help students as they write their sentences. You can also see that language transfer issues are identified at point of use. Finally, when students indicate understanding, they apply what they have learned independently in their Insight practice book. Take a moment to pause the session and explore the grammar and writing lessons in your unit so that you can experience the power of this instruction and focus on the gradual release model. When you have finished exploring, click play to resume the session. Each unit in Fundamentals Volume 1 and 2 has a coordinating theme book that's separate from the hardcover student book. It's important to note that even though these are small books, they are not leveled readers. These books are designed to build vocabulary, English structures, and basic comprehension skills, and it's important that each student has their own copy of the book. Your teacher's edition provides direct, explicit instruction for each theme book and includes copies of each page of the theme book for your convenience. The instruction for each theme book follows the same pattern. You begin by engaging the students in defining the genre and vocabulary focus. Then it's time to build background before the first and second read. The theme book instruction begins by engaging the students as you introduce the title and author of the theme book. Then, using the Insight Student Book, introduce the genre you'll be reading and create a word web using key vocabulary that they will find in the theme book. Now it's time to build background using the Words to Know spread on pages 2 and 3. Once the students are engaged, the genre has been defined, and key vocabulary has been introduced. It's time to read the theme book. Pause the session and explore the instruction for the first and second reading. When you've finished exploring, click play to resume the session. Before we move on, I'm going to share a few key features I hope you noticed about the instruction for the first and second read. In the first read, it's important to clarify the meanings of the key vocabulary words found in the text. Insight also provides an audio walkthrough of the text on the theme book CDs that gives students an overall idea of the selection. Students are asked to turn pages and identify specific parts of the book as the audio plays. After the walkthrough, it's time for the first read, which is conducted as a read-aloud, with students reading along in their own copy. As you read, you can use the built-in scaffolding for language that students may not understand. During the second read, you'll begin to focus on the reading strategy that students will continue to work with throughout the unit. As you can see, the comprehension skill instruction is scaffolded using the gradual release model we saw in the grammar and writing lessons. Continuing with that focus on the comprehension skill, students will be working to complete a growing graphic organizer as they work through the text. And don't forget about the corrective feedback that's provided to help you provide supports to your students as needed. After the second read, it's time for students to think about the books through guided practice. Students will review the text and work in small groups to create a new graphic organizer for the comprehension skill. Step-by-step instructions are provided for them in their Inside Student Book, and corrective feedback is provided in the teacher wrap. And finally, students work independently in their practice book to apply what they've learned. In the teacher wrap, you'll also have support to extend students' language development if needed. The next strand of instruction is language and literacy. In this section, students learn high-frequency words, receive explicit instruction in phonemic awareness, phonics and decoding, and reading and spelling using tools from the Inside Phonics Kit, and read on their own and build reading fluency using their student books and the fluency models using the CDs in the front of your teacher's edition. And here you see the progression from unit launch to language development, and finally to language and literacy. We begin with the high-frequency word instruction, which follows a consistent, research-based routine. First, students review a set of previously taught high-frequency words. Then it's time to introduce the new words. Students look at the word, listen to the word in a sentence, say the word, spell the word, and then say the word again. Take a moment to read through the detailed routine for introducing each word. In the bottom of the teacher wrap, there's a chart that lists each of the new words, the sample sentences, and a student-friendly elaboration that helps deepen students' understanding of the word. Next, students practice reading and spelling the words. After you've taught these new high-frequency words, use the activities for daily practice found on page PD 51 and have students work independently to complete their practice book page. These instructional routines lead students to gain control of specific words through actions, such as graphically organizing them, comparing them with synonyms and antonyms, and using them orally and in writing. Repetitive use of these routines helps students internalize the habits of thinking about, exploring, and connecting words. Now it's time to begin the phonics and decoding instruction within the language and literacy section. All of the tools you will need for these lessons are in your Inside Phonics Kit and your Teacher's Edition. We begin by using reading routine number 1 to introduce each sound spelling, having students use those sound spellings as they blend and spell words. Students then practice reading words with the sound spelling patterns taught using the decodable texts. And finally, they read a selection on their own which contains high frequency and decodable words. First, let's note the lesson format. The left page explicitly teaches each sound spelling, one at a time, using the sound spelling cards and reading routine number 1. Each column at the right shows example words to use at different steps in the routine. On the right-hand page, teachers use a color transparency to blend whole words and then spell whole words. The picture support is especially helpful to English language learners, and teachers can pre-teach the meaning of the words students are to decode. When introducing the sound spellings, the purpose of Step 1, Develop Phonemic Awareness, is to orient students to the sound of English. It's important to remember that phonemic awareness instruction focuses on the sound, not the print. As you can see in Step 1, everything is oral. Take a moment to read through the phonemic awareness instruction here in Step 1. As you can see, a detailed script and sample words are provided for each sound spelling that you teach. In Step 2, Introduce the sound spelling, the purpose is to help students connect the sounds of English with their spellings. This is where the sound spelling cards are first used. First, the picture-only side is used to introduce the target sound. Then the card is turned over to display the various spellings for the sound. As students blend sound by sound in Step 3, the goal is to practice blending words with the target phonetic element to develop a strategy for decoding unfamiliar words. Finally, in Step 4, Spell Sound by Sound, the goal is to practice spelling words with the target phonetic element to develop a strategy for spelling unfamiliar words. In this step, the students can use the write-on, wipe-off words to practice writing the words. At times, students will be learning more than one sound spelling during a lesson, and it's important to remember that you will perform all 4 steps with one sound before moving on to the next sound. Take a moment to read through the instruction for Steps 3 and 4. As you can see, Inside provides a step-by-step script that teaches students how to blend and spell sound by sound. After introducing the sound spellings, it's time to blend whole words and spell words using a transparency to model and practice. At the bottom of the page, you see the script to use with this transparency. This same script is also found in your small spiral Teacher Scripts book for easier use at the overhead. Additionally, these transparencies are also available on MyNG Connect. You begin by using the top part of the transparency to model whole word blending and structure the practice for blending the key words. Sound spellings are highlighted and underlined for easy identification. Strong visual supports are provided on each transparency to help students identify the patterns and learn new words. Also notice that language supports are provided throughout the lessons. And the CD icon next to the transparency refers to the word builder tool that includes the transparencies for use with interactive whiteboards or LCD projectors instead of overheads. Throughout each of these phonics lessons, students have the opportunity to apply what they've learned using multiple decodable texts. The purpose of each of these readings is to provide practice reading words with the sound spelling patterns taught in the phonics and decoding lessons. First, for each sound spelling that's introduced, students have a short decodable passage to read that's found in the back of their student book. Students should read the text 4 times, each time for a different purpose. Pause the session and read through the procedure for each of the 4 readings. When you have finished reading, click play to resume the session. The purpose of the whisper read is to support students as they decode words and provide immediate corrective feedback to ensure accuracy. During the partner reading, provide intensive feedback for the neediest students and have students sum up the meaning of the text. The goal of the group reading is to review the genre, discuss text features, and assess progress for individual students. And the choral reading provides the opportunity to develop fluency and check for understanding. Comprehension questions are provided in the back of your teacher's edition for each decodable passage. Once all of the sound spellings for the unit have been introduced, students read a decodable tear-out, fold-up book from their Inside Practice book, like the one you see here. For more detailed information about reading routine number 3, reading decodable text, be sure to read and tab pages PD 48 and PD 49. Next, the reading and spelling lessons bring all the sound spellings we've been working on together. Students make connections through a poem or song and they review the sound spellings they've been working with. In some units, you'll also find a reference to the phonics transfer issues in the bottom of the teacher wrap. Pages R16 to R19 in the back of your teacher's edition provide information about phonics transfer issues. After reviewing the sound spelling, students review a strategy for reading words as you read each step aloud and model the actions shown on the page. Then, students practice blending words. And multi-level strategies are provided for students who have difficulty reading the sentences. Now students are ready to read a decodable selection on their own. The lesson path for reading this selection begins as you engage students by introducing the selection, defining the genre students will be reading, and reviewing the sound spellings and high-frequency words and introducing selection words. Then students set a purpose for reading. Students actively read the selection 4 times using the same routine they used as they read the decodable passages. Students then use their practice book, fluency models, and selection reading CDs to build fluency as they practice phrasing, accuracy and rate, intonation, and expression. Finally, students apply the reading strategy they were working with in the language development section to the text they just read. Students also have the opportunity to expand their vocabulary by creating a mind map. Then students have the chance to write about their reading. Okay, so students have just completed reading a decodable text on their own, but just how decodable is it? Here you see the complete Read on Your Own text from Fundamentals Volume 2, Unit 1. All of these words are newly taught decodable words from this unit. These blue words are the newly taught high-frequency words from this unit. Now the orange words are previously taught decodable words, and since this is Unit 1 in Fundamentals Volume 2, this would include words from Fundamentals Volume 1. The green words are the previously taught high-frequency words. And that leaves just a few story words that are highlighted with purple. This is a perfect example of how the lessons in Inside build upon each other to promote student success. Now let's move on to the next strand, language and content. The language and content instruction focuses on non-fiction text features, building background and vocabulary, and comprehension strategies. This section begins with a short lesson that introduces students to a specific non-fiction text feature, leading to success in the content areas. The first step in the Focus on Text Structures lesson is to present and define the text structure using the example in the student book. Next, using the prompts in the Teacher's Edition, model how to use the text structure and provide a quick opportunity for students to practice. The next lesson gets students engaged with the text by tapping into their prior knowledge and analyzing the visuals provided. Then, build background by sharing specific facts relevant to the selection. And finally, teaching the key vocabulary. Before we look at the systematic research-based routine that's used to teach the vocabulary, let's look at the key supports found on this page. We'll use rescue as an example. Each word is highlighted throughout the text and includes the pronunciation and part of speech. Visual supports are provided for every word, and you'll see that every visual is an actual photograph. A student-friendly definition is provided to introduce each word. The opportunity for interactive practice is also provided for students. In the teacher wrap, additional vocabulary routines are provided for students to use as they practice these words. I mentioned these routines earlier in the language development section. They are behind the Teaching Routines and Strategies tab. Now let's take a look at the explicit, consistent, predictable routine that you will use to teach these words. We begin by having the students rate themselves on their previous knowledge of each word. They can do this by holding their fingers close to their chest to represent their comfort level with the word. This is the first step in the routine. The next steps are to guide students in correctly pronouncing the word by syllables, and as a whole, and explaining the meaning of the words by studying the visuals and using the clear, student-friendly examples provided. In the fourth step, elaborate word meanings by asking the probing questions in the teacher wrap and having students generate their own examples. And finally, students work with a partner to practice the words using the vocabulary study cards they have created and completing the corresponding practice book pages. Now it's time to read the language and content selection. Pause the session and take a few moments to explore the instruction provided for reading the selection. As you explore, keep your students in mind and look for specific supports that you'll use. When you have finished exploring, click play to resume the session. Now that you've had a chance to explore the instruction for reading the selection, let's look at how one teacher, Mrs. Parker, reads the language and content selection with her class. Please turn to the opening pages of your next language and content selection. As a whole group, she begins by introducing the genre of the selection. Students will be familiar with the genre because it's the same or closely linked to the genre of the Read on Your Own selection from the Language and Literacy section. This is another example of the scaffolding Inside provides to promote academic success. Next, Ms. Parker will introduce the comprehension focus, which again is the same one they've been working with since the beginning of the unit. In this example, students worked with cause and effect in the language development section and the language and literacy section. And before the reading begins, Ms. Parker introduces the selection and provides an opportunity for students to analyze the visuals in the selection. When she first started using Inside, Ms. Parker taught her students how to use all of the on-page supports right there in their student books. The key vocabulary is always highlighted within the text, and a brief definition is provided right at point of use so students can quickly access each word. In Other Words is an on-page glossary of idioms and difficult words. Words and phrases are restated so that students can replace the text with the support found below, and the meaning of the text will still be the same. For example, the selection says, "The dogs often find clues," down at the bottom of the student page. I can see that clues means the same things as things that people leave behind. So if I reread the sentence and replace the text, "The dogs often find things that people leave behind," it still has the same meaning. Students will also see frequent opportunities to monitor comprehension as they read in Before You Move On. As Ms. Parker moved through the units and Inside, she found that she only needed to review these supports every once in a while just to make sure her students were using them to support their reading. During her small group instruction, Ms. Parker has two groups of students she'll be working with, her English language learners and her striving readers. First, she takes time to set a focus for the reading, such as setting a purpose or making predictions. Then she begins the active reading of the selection. Notice that this reading is conducted as a read aloud, with students listening and reading along in their student book. At the end of each chunk of the text, Ms. Parker checks understanding by reviewing the Before You Move On questions with the students. Ms. Parker works with her English learners first and uses the multi-level strategies provided to help students at each level. In the teacher wrap, you can see that Spanish cognates, words that sound the same and mean the same in English and in Spanish, are identified at point of use. Now, while Ms. Parker is reading the selection with her English learners, her other students are working with a partner or independently on a variety of different tasks. The students who are working in groups or pairs and are sometimes grouped by Fundamentals Volume 1, and other times Ms. Parker gives students the freedom to choose who they work with. Some of them work as a group on one of the vocabulary routines, creating and using their vocabulary study cards. Ms. Parker has a couple of CD players in her classroom, so a few students are listening to the selection recording. And if anyone finishes what they're working on before she's ready for them, Ms. Parker posts a practice book assignment on the board. If they don't finish it in class, they already know what they have for homework. Once Ms. Parker's group finishes the active reading, she'll switch groups. Now, in order to make this run smoothly, Ms. Parker spent some time at the beginning of the year teaching her students the classroom routines that they'll be using throughout the year. This is key in successful, differentiated instruction. Finally, at the end of the language and content selection, students have the opportunity to think about the selection and the comprehension skill. An academic language frame is provided to help students sum up the selection as they apply the comprehension skill. They can then review the vocabulary and finally write about the selection. Again, at the end of the unit, there will be a close reading lesson that incorporates the close reading routine. The biggest difference here is the close reading is a read aloud that's found on MyNG Connect. There will be teacher directions like you see here, as well as a projectable student version. For students at the lowest program levels, students reading at a second grade level, shorter, more focused complex texts are provided. These texts are available as interactive whiteboard activities and projectable text to enable the teacher to provide the appropriate level of scaffolding. By extending the length and complexity of the text throughout the program, Insight supports all students in effectively developing the skills required for reaching grade-level performance. Now let's move on to the final strand, the writing project. Each unit in Insight Fundamentals Volume 1 and 2 includes a writing project, which provides an opportunity for students to study a model of the writing and work through each stage in the writing process. Each writing project begins with a model study. First, students make connections to the type of writing they'll be doing. Then, it's time to define the writing and identify the key areas of focus. Notice that the model includes callouts that help identify key features of the piece. As you can see here, opportunities to differentiate instruction are built right into the teacher's edition. Pause the session and take a few moments to explore the writing process instruction. As you explore, keep your students in mind and look for specific supports that you will use. When you've finished exploring, click play to resume the session. As you move through the stages of the writing process, Insight provides many supports for both you and your students, beginning with a student-friendly writing prompt, and the opportunity to analyze the prompt together and make a plan before beginning the piece. Then students pre-write by collecting ideas, choosing a topic, and organizing their ideas. As you can see, multi-level strategies are provided for pre-writing support. And at the end of each stage of the writing process, students reflect on their work. Now students are ready to draft and revise their piece. Tips are provided in the margins to help students revise student models. And again, students have the opportunity to reflect. Once students have revised their piece, it's time to edit and proofread by checking their grammar, spelling, and punctuation. And finally, students are ready to publish and share their finished piece. Presentation tips are provided for the students, and a presentation rubric is provided in the teacher wrap. Students wrap up the writing project by reflecting on how they used the writing process and what they liked best about their piece. Now that we've taken an in-depth look at all of the selections within a unit, let's see how they all come together in the classroom. Based on current research, it's best practices to integrate all 4 language skills, listening, speaking, reading, and writing, into instruction from the start. All learners will benefit from the integration of explicit instruction in reading, writing, listening, and speaking across the curriculum, regardless of their level. Research strongly suggests that reading and writing are mutually reinforcing skill domains, and that this holds true for English learners just as it does for native English speakers. Another item that you'll notice here are the language and literacy lessons that are spread out throughout the entire unit. This eliminates having students focus solely on phonics and decoding for a full week of instruction. As you can also see, Insight includes a lot of instruction designed to improve academic achievement. Another great feature in Insight is that right up front, you can see exactly which skills are going to be tested. This helps you to plan for instruction more effectively. Here's an example of the unit planner page, again, that's found at the beginning of each unit. Using this key here at the bottom of the page, we can see what types of skills are being tested. The red T's are skills tested on the quick check and/or on the unit test. The blue T's are skills tested using the language acquisition assessment, and the orange T's are skills tested on the unit writing test. You can also see the tested skills, which are still color-coded here in the objectives box for each lesson. As you can see in these 3 examples, sometimes everything in the lesson will be tested, while other lessons may only have a few elements that will be tested. These T's are your answer. They are your non-negotiables, because if it's a tested skill in Insight, it's a tested skill on state standardized tests. So they help you easily identify which lessons and parts of lessons need to be covered. To learn more about our assessments, please view the Insight Assessments On Demand module. Thank you for attending our session today. Please download your certificate of completion and check back soon for your next module.